Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. It's Ren here, welcome to my room. Slightly darker day today. First overcast day in like 3 weeks in the south of France, but no, France is not particularly special as a country. I love to pretend that I'm a chauvinist. So today I would like to talk about the topic of INFJs and anger. Because a user by the name of Lou Lance, hi Lou, left an interesting comment to my INFJ Dark Side video. And Preston the Book, another user, also had an interesting reaction. And so I'll read their comments first and then offer some thoughts on the matter. And hopefully we can, have a discussion following that on the topic. So Lou says, I love to hear your thoughts on INFJ anger and how to cope with it. I feel like anger in INFJs is a kind of complicated issue since it's all built up inside until you finally allow yourself to express it, and then it's like an explosion. That it is indeed. It's really affecting me right now, and I was wondering how other INFJs felt. Anyway, love your videos. Keep being great. Thanks, Lou. And Preston the Book reacts and says, this is definitely relatable, and as a fellow INFJ, unfortunately, I'd actually say that's the nature of my dark side. Shadow SE. And here, Preston the Book, sorry, it's kind of a weird thing to call you by. If you have a name, don't hesitate to share. But for now, I'll have to call you by Preston the Book, because that's the only thing I know about you, your username. When you say Shadow SE, do you mean like inferior SE? Because I feel like I don't think I'm a big, what would be the word? Like expert on the shadow functions, which is in partly why I've never made a video on the shadow functions. But there is a reason behind that too. It's kind of a circular thing. The reason why I don't know much is because the little that I know has not convinced me that shadow functions, and maybe Vincent will be shocked by this because he seems to like referring to the shadow functions a lot, but I just have not been able to predict the use of the shadow functions in a person. So I have a bit of an issue with that. But when you say shadow SE, do you mean inferior? Because it seems to me that in the INFJ, the SE function is inferior and that the shadow would be SI. Actually, the inferior for the INFJ, I guess slot number 8 would be FI, but no, it would be SI. It would be SI. FI will be slot number 6, sorry. So I'm assuming you mean grip SE, but maybe there's something I'm missing here. So do let me know if there's something that you can edify me about. I can be scary, both to myself and others. This is Preston the Book talking. When I am angry, since I am usually a very calming person, and I almost become a completely different person in those times. It would be interesting to see Ren's take on INFJ anger. If he's up to doing so, I know I wouldn't want to talk about it. Well, I like risks. I like, I like the feeling, the adrenaline, the SC thing. I do enjoy the idea that in this channel I could talk about anything. Someone was mentioning to me recently in the comments that I could also make a video on my thoughts on Hitler being an INFJ. And it's obviously a very touchy topic, but I absolutely see no reason why I couldn't try. Of course, I'd have to be kind of careful how I handle the topic, but it's potentially something interesting and nothing. In principle, I'm not against anything. I'm not against talking about anything as long as it doesn't put certain people in a difficult position, or if it involves obviously revealing things about other people. If it's like neutral in that sense, then I'm always up for finding a tactful and thoughtful way to tackle and broach the topic. So in the case of anger, it's interesting that I was never, sometimes I think about what kind of topics I can explore. And for some reason, anger never cropped up, which to me now sounds a bit strange because it is a very interesting topic. And the reason why I was struck by Lou's comments and Preston Book's answer is that it really resonated with me, especially both really, basically, when Lou speaks of the explosion and Preston Book mentions and I'm going to quote specifically because this is essentially a summary of me. I can be scary both to myself and others when I am angry, since I am usually a very calming person, and I almost become a completely different person in those times. And I mean, it's true, like, you know what, I'm going to be making this video about anger in the INFJ through my experience, because it's not necessarily a subject that I've researched from the point of view of the INFJ, but I think that maybe in the future, what could be interesting to do, if my brother is up for it, is to do an interview with my brother in which we talk about his experience with me and this kind of duality, this weird duality between being the vast majority of the time a very nice, I think, calm person, and not just nice and calm, but agreeable, seeking compromise. For example, my brother is someone who does not seek compromise as much, and he's more often moody than I am. But he doesn't have those big anger outbursts. And he has definitely said to me before that sometimes when I have them, it can be a bit scary. Not only because it's unexpected, but also because, like Preston Book says, it can go very deep, it can cut very deep, it can be very devastating, it can be a kind of conflagration. And it's fascinating to me that doesn't seem to be only my case. I mean, I'm assuming that not everyone in the comments is going to find something that resonates, but it does seem to me that there is, in the INFJ, going to be some kind of difficulty with the expression of anger, because by definition, when you express anger, you're sort of saying goodbye to Effie in a way, right? Because, I mean, like, Effie seeks harmony. So you take a group of people, you seek harmony. So imagine, and this is going to echo my video on the door slam a little bit, by the way. Imagine that you experience those microaggressions, those micro jabs that you get from people. And, you know, some of them might be unintentional, some of them might not be that bad or whatever. But some of them might hurt. And because you are willing to, you know, or because we are willing to keep the harmony going, we're not necessarily going to express our discomfort or annoyance straight away. We're going to let it build up inside, because that's the thing. I think maybe the fundamental insight here is that anger needs an outlet. You know, I went through a phase of trying to completely rein in my anger. Again, I'm not like this constantly furious, boisterous beast, you know. But like just anyone, I can experience negative emotion, and one of these negative emotions is anger, whether it be because something that I expected to work a certain way is not working, or because maybe I'm predisposed to getting angry more easily by snapping if I'm tired or stressed. Is something that is very recurrent in my life in general. And if I try to rein it in, if I try to not like make it even worse, instead of allowing myself to express it more, rein it in even more, then it's going to explode even more, because it needs an outlet. You know, the negative emotion that one feels when they get angry, they kind of need an outlet for it. I think doing sports can be a good way to sort of like get it out, you know, because there is a kind of rage in the activity, the physical activity, the effort associated with it all of the time. You can imagine in it a sort of catharsis. There's some kind of suffering that you experience. You make yourself suffer a little bit in sports, and that allows one to sort of externalize a lot of these emotions. But if you keep them within yourself, they're going to explode. And if you have a tendency to be diplomatic because it stresses you out when things are not harmonious, then you allow it to build up. But what seems to be a slightly, or even a completely perverse effect or perverse mechanism seems to be that, imagine that you're in a situation in which someone provokes you or upsets you, and for the sake of you have two choices. Either you let them know, or you don't let them know, or you're very subtle about it, so you don't allow yourself to express your discontent. If you don't allow yourself to express your discontent, anger might build up inside of you, and if that is repeated like dozens of times over, at some point it's going to erupt, it's going to explode. Now, on the other hand, if you do face the person, then what's going to happen is that you will express discontent, but you probably will feel nevertheless some kind of negative emotion coming from the negative energy that is created by the disharmony that you caused. A person like my grandmother, for example, whenever someone upsets her or she feels insulted or angry, she manages to express it. It's always very matter of fact. It's assertive, but she never gets to a super high pitch of anger because she's always expressing it when she feels like she should express it. And that's because my grandmother is not afraid of feeling any kind of negative emotionality from the sort of sense of having created disharmony. Because my grandmother is not an FE expert, she is an ESTJ, and she is never really that angry, but she often, more often than one might think, she often expresses a disagreement or discontent of some sort, but once it's done, it's done. And, in my family, the two people that have had the biggest outbursts of anger have been my dad and myself. And we're both, I think, people that spend a lot of time, well, he's an FE dominant, I'm not an FE dominant, but I'm an FE auxiliary, and I think both of us, by definition, we spend a lot of time cajoling people, and in a way we spend a lot of time acting so that people are happy to be in our company, and that includes making a lot of little sacrifices, probably to the naturalness of our behavior. And it's not something that we can really fight, because in a way it is also natural for us to be that way, so it's really complicated. But I don't know if there is a correlation between that and the fact that it just so happens my dad and I have, or at least my dad used to have, and I have, again, it's maybe once a year or something, and well, it depends. I went through a bit of a stressful period recently and I could get a bit angry, but I'll tell you a bit about how I managed to sort of deal with that a bit. But yeah, like a big outburst, seriously, so in the case of myself and my dad, what happens is that often we shout, but also we have a way to just, with words, just like, for some reason, just say hurtful things that we really regret, and we apologize afterwards. And I think I'm a bit better than he is at apologizing, but this could be subjective. My brother does not talk to my dad, and he does not talk to my dad because of some stuff that my dad said to him 2 years ago. I don't know what my dad said to him, but I do know that my dad can, when he's a lovely man, but when he has an outburst of anger, he can say things that you just are out of this world cruel. And I have not gotten to that, but I definitely can snap, and when I snap, it's like, it's really devastating. It can be, it hasn't happened in a long time, but there's always this risk that it might happen. Now, in terms of how to, if Lou is looking for advice or press in the book, or any other person about how to negotiate that, how to deal with it, how to become better at managing it. Well, from what I just talked about, I think it will appear obvious that I might not be the best person to express the opinion of an expert. But why do I even bother always saying that anyway? Because it's pretty obvious that I'm not an expert. I mean, my profile picture is like that of an anime girl with blue hair. So I think it announces pretty clearly that my channel is that of someone who enjoys stuff and talks about it rather than an expert. But anyway, in case that wasn't already clear. So I would say that recently I have managed to not allow this building up inside me to happen. I think as INFJs, it's probably something that a lot of INFJs, or at least some INFJs, are going to experience in some way if they tend to repress negative emotion for fear of creating disharmony. So I would say that probably the most important piece of advice I can give is to try to express this discontent, express these emotions more often. Express them more often. Obviously, there's doing a lot of sports that can help, I think, to just get them out. But even sometimes, like they can actually be directed at some people. They can be directed at some people. Often they are. And that's why anger can be hurtful to certain people, because it can be personalized in a way. There are people who are going to witness it and be taken aback and surprised by the explosion, as you call it, Lou. But there's also some people who are going to be very hurt by the fact that it is targeted at them, and doubly hurt by the intensity of it and by the fact they didn't expect from someone who's usually so nice. So to get an outlet for the expression of that negative emotion is always good. So you can imagine that maybe say like you have an outburst of anger when you reach a certain pitch of negative emotion. So say like when you get to 100%, you have the outburst. Well, let's say that each little instance of increases it by 1 or 2% on average. And that if you express it, you neutralize, you sort of bring about minus 1 or 2%. Imagine that if you never neutralize it, well, the percents are going to add up until you reach 100% and explode, and then it will bring it down to, sometimes not to zero, because it can also happen to be stressed out by one's bouts of anger, because then you become worried about what you just did to other people and for the atmosphere, etc. So it's not even that much of a great outlet to have an anger, an outrage, and outburst. So I would say, rather than allow that to happen, to just manage to express that as much as possible, to get it out so that the percentages don't add up but rather are subtracted. And really, I think it consists in allowing oneself to take the risk to create not so much disharmony, but maybe what's going to come across as disharmony at first sight to an INFJ who's so intent on keeping harmony going. Because if you manage to express something, if you say something, if you express even discontent politely, I mean, that's not necessarily going to create disharmony, A lot of the time, you could argue that it's the other person who pissed you off who created the disharmony. So I think there's probably a link between anger and the INFJ and being able to stand up for oneself and actually putting people in their place. Because the more you put people in their place, you will do it a bit like my granny, a bit like the ESTJ. You will do it and then it will be over, and then you will no longer think about it, and nothing will build up inside you in terms of negative emotion. Whereas if you allow that to happen, then your anger is gonna burst out. And it happens to me. Now, in recent years, I've learned a little bit to express, whenever I'm unhappy or upset and I don't like something and I've been made a little bit angry, a little bit irritated, I tend to express it quicker than I used to. In a way that makes it more predictable for people to expect that I may express it. So they're not as taken aback, by my former, mostly sort of calm surface and then disrupted by these configurations of anger. And at the same time, it also means that I never really get too angry. It's just like whenever I'm not pleased with something, whenever I'm unhappy, I'm upset, I express it kind of forcefully, politely, firmly, but forcefully. Because the more angry you are, the more likely you are to be hurtful, not polite, to blow things out of proportion in the eyes of everybody else, and to upset, create a lot of sadness, a lot of a lot of disappointment, sadness, hurt in the experiences of those who have to submit to it because you impose it to them. So to really try to, it's a bit like the dismantling of a bomb in a way. It's just the dismantling consists in expressing it more, and to express it more, you sort of need to have confidence that you're not going to upset other people. But in order to have confidence that you're not going to upset other people, I think there's probably a connection here between not associating one's self-worth, and as an INFJ, for instance, not associating one's self-worth and what one can contribute as being so dependent on how agreeable one is to others. Your self-worth is not dependent on that, actually. Your self-worth is inherent to you. And then, you can do whatever you want with it. If you're nice, you'll have friends. If you're not super nice, you won't have many friends, but your self-worth will remain intact. Now, if you predicate your self-worth, and I'm not suggesting that anyone here is doing that, on never being angry, on always being calm and tactful and listening to people and allowing things to sort of like get to pile up, and to ignore the piling up because FE is not necessarily very aware of these things. That's another aspect. FE, in a sense, the INFJ is not particularly emotionally introspective compared to types like the INFP or the ENFP. We have a tendency to repress those emotions, and so that can facilitate the eruption of anger. If that combines with a particularly stressful period where you might end up being in the SE grip, well then that's just a very, very bad recipe, and that's going to create a lot of explosions. So ask yourself, do you think that you tend to actually be easily anxious and easily stressed? Because then your systemic cropping up of angry moments might actually sort of be subtended, be like undergirded by a broader sense of being anxious, in which case what you need to think about is what is causing your anxiety and how to address it. And I would like to make a video on anxiety as well. My girlfriend has suggested that I make one. I think that my girlfriend would be amazing at making a video on anxiety because she's really, really good at dealing with it. But I can also make one. So I probably will make a video on anxiety very soon, because I think that in an INFJ, anxiety and stress can lead to the SE grip, which can lead in turn to an overemphasis on SEUs, which we do not really master enough to be used as if it were our dominant function, and therefore to a lot of angry and sort of reckless behavior. So is it that, or is it that you're not particularly stressed, or not more than the average person, but you have a tendency to not give your negative emotions an outlet? And then this requires learning how to detect when you are experiencing negative emotion. And it's true that a lot of the time the INFJ is not good at that. I've become better at it through various means, which I will hopefully explain in yet another video. For now, I hope this was helpful. I hope that this can lead to a conversation very soon in the comments. Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Hope that was good. And take care, guys. See you soon.